Hello, I am contestant number 2702, and today I'm going to show you how I made these three pastries: the sugar cookies, challah bread, and coffee cake. So I first started off with the sugar cookies, and in a bowl I combined the flour, baking soda, and baking powder, and I mixed it up really well. And then after that, I'm going to set that aside. And then we're going to do the creaming method with the butter, which is at room temperature, so it's soft. And then the sugar. And I took that to the mixer and I let that mix. I let that mix up really well until it was fluffy and light. Once it was ready, I added the egg and the vanilla, and I beat it up again just so that it was all combined really well. I try to keep the speed very moderate. It might seem like it was going really fast, but I sped up the videos a bit, so just keep that in mind. And then I added the flour in a little by little until it was all combined. I made sure not to overmix it. Just once I saw that it was ready, I stopped the mixing, and I made sure to scoop the bowl so everything was nice and combined. There was no like clumps of flour or something like that. Alright, right here it was combining really well, so I took it out of the bowl and I wrapped it up in saran wrap and put it in the fridge for 30 minutes so that it would be easier for me to shape the cookies. Alright, so after 30 minutes in the fridge, I took out the cookie dough and I started to cut each cookie out. I weighed it out that way it could be pretty even in size, and they could bake evenly in the oven. And after I rolled each one into a little ball and I placed them evenly in the tray, that way they had enough room so that they wouldn't stick together in the oven. Alright, and then after each one was rolled out, I grabbed a glass with a plate of sugar and I squished down each cookie to a pretty even thickness for all of them. And I used the sugar so that it wouldn't stick to the glass, and it helped pretty well. And then after pressing all of them out, I put them in the oven at 375 for about 8 minutes. That's how long it took for mine. I made sure that the cookie was not over baked, that the crust was nice and gold, but the inside was still soft. So here I was plating them up after they cooled down. And then I grabbed one of the cookies to show the edge, how it was gold and crispy, but the inside was still really soft. Alright, after the cookies, I started with the challah bread, which in a bowl I combined basically everything, which was the bread flour, yeast, sugar, and salt. I combined that first, that way they combined really well in the bowl. And then I added the water, the vegetable oil, and the egg yolks. And then I took that to the mixer with a hook attachment and I mixed it at speed 2 for 4 minutes. So that was there. And I just let that combine for the 4 minutes. And after the 4 minutes, I brought it up to speed 3 and I let that mix for 5 minutes. So in total, it mixed up for about 9 minutes. Okay, so when the dough was ready, I scraped everything from the bowl. I sprayed some non-stick spray and covered it up and let that rest for 25 minutes. After the 25 minutes, I cut the dough in half and then I made 6 strands for each dough. And then after, I rolled them out into 12-inch strands. I did 6 strands for each bread. So that's just me doing that. And then after I rolled each one out, I started to braid them together. And then I repeated the same thing with the other dough. after I finished each one, I put them on the baking tray with parchment paper, and I was just moving them around so that they can look pretty nice. And then I let them rest for about 40 minutes. And after they doubled in size, I put egg wash on it, and then I put them in the oven at 325 for about 20 minutes. And then this is them when they came out. Alright, so next I finished off with the coffee cake, and I first started making the streusel topping, which I combined the flour, the sugar, and the cinnamon in a bowl. I whisked it up with a fork just so it was combined well, and then I added the cold butter, and with my hands I just kind of pressed it really well until it was kind of a gravel crumbly texture. Took a little bit of time, but I made sure not to melt the butter. Alright, so after that I set that aside, and now I used a 9x9-inch square pan, and I lined that up, greased it up, and in a bowl I combined the dry ingredients first, which was the flour, sugar, baking powder, baking soda, and the salt, and I whisked that up really well. And after mixing up the dry ingredients, I mixed up the wet ingredients, which was the sour cream, vegetable oil, eggs, and the vanilla extract, and I just used a whisk, and I did it by hand. Made sure to mix everything together nice and even. And after I put the dry ingredients in the mixing bowl, and I took it to the mixer, and I combined the wet and dry ingredients together. It just took like a couple minutes. I made sure not to overmix it, and for some reason it didn't record me putting it in the tray, but I'm gonna just tell you while I cut up the coffee cake. I put half of the batter into the tray, and then I layered on half of the streusel, and then I put the rest of the batter, and then I put the rest of the streusel. So it's kind of like layers, and then I used a knife to swirl it together, and then I'm just showing off the swirls here. That's how it kind of ended up looking in the cake once it was done. And I had put it in the oven at 350. It took about 20 minutes to bake, and I let it cool off, and then this is the final result of the coffee cake.